Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, coming to you with yet another interview out of Gamescom. Again, I swear I'm not separating them all on purpose. I just keep finding out about them a day apart. But we have one from videogamechronicle.com. I'll include a link in the description of the video. Be sure to go click on it because, well, yeah, I'm telling you what's being said in the article, offering my opinion on it. That is the original article, so be sure to go give it a click so we keep getting more and more interviews from events like Gamescom. So we have this headline here, and it's already a headline worth talking about. I hope players don't forget we are people too. Final Fantasy XIV's Yoshi-P on community, crossovers, and consoles. You know, that's a big headline because right now there is a lot of discontent, and in a lot of ways there's discontent with the discontent. It's very exhausting hearing when people are critical or overly negative about Final Fantasy XIV, and I feel that. I'm someone who is often critical, and I've even had people tired of me being critical of Final Fantasy XIV, which is a really weird thing because I feel like I'm so very tame and a lot more trying to be constructive with the criticisms and the concerns that I may have. But it is an important thing here because Yoshi-P's had to say this a lot more in the past few years, especially since Shadowbringers, that developers, they're doing what they can. They're doing whatever they think is best, and whether or not it works at the end of the day, yeah, they are people. And it's an important thing to distinguish the line between criticizing a product that has been put out for not meeting your standards, which everyone, if you have criticisms, you should absolutely feel okay doing it. I know I do. You should too. And attacking the people making it. And it's very, very tough when those lines get blurred. So as normal as it's seemingly become to do that kind of thing, this is just another reminder of those messages that, I hope you remember it. Now, obviously, this is a quote from the interview itself. We'll get to find out the context around it of exactly why, or where this is being brought on. But I do think it's important to stop and just take that headline as it is here at the beginning. So, we have here, first and foremost, Yoshi-P says via his interpreter, I barely managed to sit down and press record on my dictaphone. I'd like to say thank you for joining us at 14 on the first day at Gamescom. Right at the start. I'm sure you're extremely busy, so I appreciate your time. It's weird that he's done this to like me and other people too. Like he's always thanks the person doing the interview, and it's like, man, I thought you're the one with the busy schedule. All right. He's not wrong. It's 10 a.m. on the first business day at Gamescom, and Final Fantasy XIV director, producer, and I are at each other's first appointment of the show. It's rare for the interviewee to thank the interviewer for their time before they can get a word in, though. Usually it's the other way around. But thus begins the charm offensive Yoshida, best known by fans of the Final Fantasy series as Yoshi-P, is often acknowledged for. In a world where reports of players turning against developers are becoming sadly commonplace, Yoshida has built a reputation as one of the most approachable and authentic directors due to his frequent communication with 14's player base. I mean, I can already see people are going to see that statement and take some. There are times where we go far too long without communications on things we feel like we really need to know about. Features that we're waiting on to, we hear, oh, we're aiming for this release, only to find out kind of at the last second that it's actually not going to be happening yet. This has happened with quite a few things in Dawn Trail, TARDIS housing, as well as the Raid Finder. And I'm sure there are some other things if I stopped and thought about it, where we definitely feel like we could use an improved form of communication regarding specific features. So there's definitely be mixed feelings about that. But generally, yeah, Yoshi-P he goes to shows and, everyone can appreciate him. And generally, I'll say when you're in the room with him, it's hard not to kind of, you're kind of drawn in because he's very charismatic and, very passionate about just having discussions about Final Fantasy XIV. The general consensus among players is that even when the game goes in a direction they may not personally like, it's still hard to dislike the man in charge. Fair enough. As I sit down with Yoshida, it's been a mere matter of hours since Gamescom's opening night live, where it was revealed that Final Fantasy XIV and Monster Hunter Wilds would be crossing over into each other's world for the second time, might I add, with a special collaborative DLC coming to each game. It's an obvious place to start, but soon the conversation moves on to the game's player base, a tease about a Switch 2 port, which we had in another interview, and finally, true to form, a call for the gaming community to come together peacefully. While this interview took place last week, today marks exactly 12 years since Yoshida's relaunched version of 14, subtitled Realm Reborn, was released on PS3 and PC. All right, let's start with the news about 14 and Monster Hunter. How that crossover start? It's a single game getting a crossover. It's easier to figure out. With both games getting crossover events, how did they approach Capcom or vice versa? The 14 development team and Monster Hunter team at Capcom have a very long-rooted history and a very long connection. It dates back to the days of the PSP when Monster Hunter Portable 2nd G, Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, was released. That's the longtime Monster Hunter fans are going to be like, yes. At the time I talked to the producer and director, we used to talk a lot about how things were in the games industry. So because we had that existing relationship, when I came over to the 14 team, the guys at Capcom very kindly said, Yoshida-san, since you're now in charge, it would be great if we could do some sort of collaboration between Monster Hunter and Final Fantasy XIV. The eventual result was the previous collaboration with Monster Hunter World. After that crossover collaboration finished, the team at Capcom told us it was so much fun that it would be great if we could get yet another opportunity to do it again. Yeah, and everyone in the community asked for it. I don't even really like doing the collaboration events. Like, even if they're kind of fun and they're well-spirited, I'm always like, I don't know how I feel about that. But the Rathalos event, I was like, no, that was good. I would take that one again for sure. They told me that since it was so much fun last time, it'd be great if we could do something really big again. So we talked about the possibility. Said, okay, if you're interested, then let's do it. So all the planning crossover collaboration started just over a year ago. Yeah, he said he was drinking with them at Gamescom last year, so that was when it really happened. Because the Final Fantasy series is so narrative heavy, a lot of the fan base cares deeply about its storyline. Do you ever worry with crossovers like this? Some of them might take it too seriously, think, wait a minute, this isn't part of the lore. So I'll start with the conclusion first. All of the 14 players and all of our fans are extremely positive. After everything I just said earlier, it's hard to not get through that and have to stop and read it for a second. All right. This applies to not only 14, but throughout the Final Fantasy series. I'm online too much, I think, after reading that, because that's so does not describe my experience with the Final Fantasy franchise. I like most of them, or at least they're okay with most of them. But man, when you start bringing it up online, it goes a whole different direction. But he's talking about normal people. He's not talking about us terminally online people. He's talking about normal people. We have a convenient possibility which lies behind this thing, which we call the interdimensional rift, that serves as a door of sorts where the worlds can connect together. And it provides the possibility of bringing those elements into the story. This time, too, for our crossover, we've been working on addressing each of the reasons why the Palico comes into the world of 14, and also the elements which you saw in the trailer, why they are presenting themselves in 14, and how that connects with the story. We've been putting in a lot of hard work to present this narrative in a crossover content. I think all of our fans are really looking forward to experiencing that and discovering it for themselves. In terms of the content in Final Fantasy XIV, all of the lines from the Palico have been reviewed by the main writer at Monster Hunter at Capcom. Also, for our Final Fantasy XIV content, which will be in Monster Hunter Wilds, that's the Omega Planetes and the setting for Omega Planetes and all of the lines of dialogue. Our team, yeah, there's an interview that goes over Alpha and Omega. Apparently, they're going to be involved in the Monster Hunter Wilds quests, the OMG, Little Mini Omega. And actually, there's actually like a real story written behind Omega Planetes and his why he's even in Monster Hunter Wilds. That sounds a little more interesting than the Behemoth one, at least to me on the surface. So both these elements are official stories which will be implemented in the games. I hope the players will look forward to them. That's an interesting statement. So historically, we've been told crossover events are non-canon in their existing worlds. The statement kind of leaves that a little vague on if they're saying they're official stories, but are they lore canon? And it sounds like they're trying to write them in a sense where it could be actually possible for them to be lore canon. I would probably wait for a future comment on it. Hell, maybe even in the same interview. I don't think so, but maybe even in the same interview. That might have more insight into that if they've changed their approach to that. We're coming up for the 12th anniversary of Final Fantasy XIV, and it's a Realm Reborn version. As the time goes, it does get harder. Does it get harder juggling the needs for the existing player base by adding new features while also making sure it doesn't become too overwhelming for new players? Xbox players just got it last year for the first time, for example. For example, you sometimes get a longer-term player saying, like, jobs should be more complicated, and others saying, no, make them simpler. Is it difficult to find a balance? Can I double-check the intention behind the question? If it's more about the content design or if it's more about job mechanics, the answer I will provide is very different. We have a lot of different elements of 14, so I just want to make sure I understand the focal point of the question. Job mechanics was just an example. It was more of a general question about how with each new update you decide the balance between adding more and more content without it becoming overwhelming. Thank you. Firstly, regarding existing players, the point came up in one of your previous questions. 14 is a story-driven game, and so the first thing we place the primary importance on for new players is for them to play through the whole main story. Which is that overwhelming. Yeah, that could be overwhelming for some people. Definitely. So we place the most importance on making sure the player's experience throughout the main scenario is as smooth as it can be for them, and we make sure to follow up accordingly to that end. When it comes to this is just the same statement, but blown up in case you're wondering. When it comes to the example of job mechanics, it was back at the time of Shadowbringers, around 2 expansions ago, we received a lot of feedback from the players that for the job they were playing with, they wanted to have a certain action from another job. Received quite a lot of this feedback, and the general feedback was that they wanted a more averaged out experience for playing each other. Yeah, a lot of people forget, and by the way, I'm going to blame myself for this as well, because I'm totally among the crew. I'm not absolved of the negative thought here. What happened with this whole 2-minute meta thing? That's our fault. Not just me, obviously, but so many people had complaints about Bard having a 3-minute cooldown and some jobs having 90 seconds and everything not lining up. So like, fine, we'll make it all line up. And everyone's like, what the hell? Now every job is the same. And it's like, oh, we did this to ourselves and we're mad. Shadowbringers is kind of like, okay, in my opinion. I think if we went back to Shadowbringers, it was flexible enough, and Endwalker was kind of like the tipping point where it actually became too much. But that being said, I think a lot of people would actually prefer to go back to things like Stormblood and Shadowbringers because it was kind of like, oh, I kind of get what you're saying. Like, yeah, it's a little homogenized, like it's moving in that direction, but there's still like a few like little quirks here or there that like make a few jobs unique. And that's why everyone's kind of like really looking at that 8.0 job adjustment and trying to like hype themselves up. Like, gotta stay real because it's like hard to imagine, but you're trying to hype it up at the same time. General feedback is they wanted more average experience, took that and acted on feedback. But I think either way you look at it, there's no case of this adjustment would be good or this kind of adjustment would be bad. In any case, I think it's more of a case of addressing the player's needs. And so when we get that sort of feedback from players, we make sure to make our adjustments. The thing I place importance on is making sure the player's sense of excitement is still there. I think we always have to keep that in mind and make sure that we are working on that feedback accordingly. So I think inevitably that becomes the answer to the question. So there's really no kind of hard or firm, this is the correct answer, but inevitably becomes the answer that we take. I mean, yeah, this is a pretty safe answer. I mean, it's correct also. You can't just say, yeah, we're right, you're wrong, shut up. You know, it just doesn't work that way. When it comes to the next expansion, if we took on the player feedback that they want the jobs to be more complicated, if we made those adjustments, and eventually we get the same kind of feedback that we wouldn't be able to satisfy all the players. Yeah. So that in mind, we always aim to make sure we're providing an exciting playing experience for the players. Having said that, right now we do have something really big planned regarding jobs. At this point in time, I cannot share any details. See, he keeps saying it's going to be really big and but no part of me wants to start thinking about the possibilities. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to start thinking about like all of the different ways you can incorporate job identity and new job identities. You could like, no one's like, people are gonna be like, big jobs, you mean Summoner is gonna be able to just have a summon out at all times and it's just gonna auto attack and I'm gonna cast Cure 3? Sorry, my Final Fantasy 11 is coming out. Wait, you understand what I'm getting at this point. All right, you got it, right? Whereas I just think they're gonna be introducing less samey job gauges and thus the main means through which you actually access your big hitting abilities just won't be so similar for every job, but that functionally we will still be playing a very similar game with 1-2 minute metas, etc., etc. Like, I have a hard time imagining we're just moving away from that 1-2 minute meta and going to something that feels so drastically different. Which is why when he keeps saying it's going to be, like, I want to be excited about it, but a part of me is just like, no, you got to stay grounded in reality. You got to be chill. You can't just tell yourself it's going to be this. There's not going to be Puppet Master. It's not going to happen. Just you're fine. All right? You're fine. Final Fantasy series has been an ever-evolving since the beginning. Final Fantasy 2 didn't have XP in it. You don't need to talk about Final Fantasy 2. You don't need to bring that up right now. We're having the talk we're having right now is perfectly fine, sir. We're good. It feels like in recent years there seemed to be more backlash when new mechanics are introduced, making 14 online, making 15 open world, making 16 a dark fantasy game. I wonder if you believe that maybe... Also, Yoshi-P didn't bring it up. The interviewer brought it up. Don't bring up Final Fantasy 2. I wonder if you believe that maybe Final Fantasy 16 would have been better received if it didn't have Final Fantasy in the title. I like this question because players bring their own preconceptions to what Final Fantasy means to them. Apologies if I haven't really accurately taken in the intention of the question. Regarding 14, 15, and 16, I think in the first place, if they weren't Final Fantasy games, they wouldn't have been developed. And the reason is that because it's a Final Fantasy, there are so many resources and costs and quality assurance and efforts put into producing a title of that scope. Also, Mr. Sakaguchi, who is the founding father, said you have to take on a challenge for it to be a Final Fantasy. We learned that from him, so because of that, I've never once felt things would be different if it didn't have Final Fantasy in the title. Fair. But as you mentioned, Final Fantasy is a long-lasting franchise, and now we have many, many players across the globe. So a lot of players will have their own preference on what they say is their favorite Final Fantasy. Some might say 7, others would say 14, others would say 16, some players would say 10. So I think Final Fantasy is unique. Final Fantasy X-3 confirmed? No, just kidding. I think Final Fantasy is unique in that because it's so long-standing that there's so many different titles in the franchise. And so when we develop a Final Fantasy and release it as the latest entry, there will be some players who play and go, oh, this is the best Final Fantasy. And there will be others who say, this isn't Final Fantasy. It's so funny because Whoops loves Final Fantasy 16, and he said that it's like his favorite, like by far. And I mean, I don't need to tell you how different that is from some of the opposite opinions you get about it on the internet. Like, that's when he said the fans for the franchise are positive. I've seen both sides, man. It's so hard for me to imagine that, but I'll take your word for it. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, my favorites are 6, 10, and Zodiac Age. I hated the original 12. When I played Zodiac Age, I was like, you know what? Top 3. I'll take it. When we develop a Final Fantasy... Okay, yeah, that's it. For the next installment of the Final Fantasy franchise, we are currently discussing it amongst the company. Okay. All right. And considering what sort of response the players could provide, we are discussing what would be the best for the next Final Fantasy. Discussion is taking place across Square Enix as a company, but as someone who's involved in the franchise working on 14 and 16, I am sharing my opinions as well. I would like to remind everyone that Square Enix invited the developers of Clair Obscura Expedition 33 to their office for a big discussion about sharing ideas. Just saying. Just putting that out there. I'm going to put that energy out into the universe because, you know, like, I really liked 16 and I'm even okay with 15. Just okay. But, you know, Clair Obscura was... I love that game. I would not say no to something in that vein. All right. Of course, at this point in time, we can't share any information about the latest installment in the franchise. We are very seriously considering and discussing the possibilities. We will never give up on that challenge, so I do hope that players will look forward to whatever is released in the future. When Rod Ferguson was still at Blizzard, he was talking about the possibility of Diablo coming to Switch 2, and he implied that it could be difficult to bring a live service game over to a system like that. But why difficult? Wait, wasn't like one of the best versions of Diablo 3 on the Switch? On the first Switch? Am I bugging? I remember playing it on the actual Switch. Like, wait, this version's really good. The console version of Diablo 3 in general is pretty good, but that was on a Switch. It was, I mean, but I guess Diablo 4 is a lot more egregious. I'll put it that way. Yeah, we'll go with that. It's a lot more egregious in that same regard. Diablo 3, while it has its ups and downs, when you're just kind of updating the seasons for free every now and again, I can't imagine that's nearly as hard as functioning as Diablo 4 would on the Switch 2. That'd be one of the potential sticking points in perhaps bringing 14 to the Switch 2. I'd like to first start by saying I don't know exactly the intentions and details behind what Rod mentioned. When it comes to Final Fantasy XIV, when I became in charge and A Realm Reborn was released, of course it was available on PC, but the main platform was PS3. That was already a console, so I consider consoles to have a network environment as a given, and I think that goes not only for PlayStation, but also Xbox and Nintendo platforms. You'd think that. Especially when we consider the younger players. When they were born, such things as network connections were already the norm and a given for them. And growing up, they've always had that around them. So for me as a developer, I don't really have much concern about that kind of element. For me, it's just my aim to provide Final Fantasy XIV and 16 to as many players as possible, and I hope that as many players as possible will be able to enjoy those two games. We're putting in our best efforts to ensure that this happens, so it's fine to convey to your readership that I consider the possible... Yeah, he said this something very similar to a different... I convey to your readership, I consider the possibilities very positively. We are putting in our best efforts, so I hope players would look forward to possibilities in the future, but I ask for a little bit. I think it's a foregone conclusion 14 is going to end up on the Switch too. And as long as that doesn't come with any baggage for anyone else. The PS4 version has never felt like it's provided baggage. We know the PS3 version has factually provided baggage. The PS4 is largely the storage limit, as was described in another interview, which they've admitted is even like they hit the limit and then Sony raised the limit. Now Sony's like, I don't really know how much more we can raise the limit. So PS4 is it might survive 8.0. Some people think it will, some people think it won't. I think it will. But the Switch 2, the only concern I have is the CPU. But even then, it's still a matter of you can do simple tasks on it. I have friends who I've raided with on their Steam Deck, and that was largely fine. It's just that it's a bit more... That might be a little more forward advancement in technology for the Steam Deck going forward. So I have a feeling it is coming to Switch 2, and I think it'll be fine. I don't think it'll affect anything negatively overall. When it comes to existing 14 players, if hypothetically a Switch 2 version was released, they would have the chance, for example, going through the main story. They could play on PC and do raiding on PC. But when it comes to other types of content, could sit back, relax on the sofa with the Switch 2 in hand. They could do their gathering and crafting content. I'm super excited. They could do their raid content on it too. Trust me, I have faith they can do their raid content on it too. I just don't want to imagine getting any stick drift doing it. When it comes to players who haven't played 14 before, the younger generation, if they're starting 14 on Switch 2, it might be a new genre for them. I'd be super excited to get these players into the genre and enjoying the game as well. It's kind of verbatim what he said in that other interview. This end, we've been discussing Nintendo, and the discussions have been positive, so I do hope players will look forward to hopefully the good news in the future. There are many games out there with large player bases, 14 is so different, which often have players saying, why don't they just do this? I wish they could just do that. Is there one specific thing you wish people understood more? This is probably where the title comes from. The players are our customers, and they're paying monthly to play our game. So if it comes to the question of whether I should give them a flat-out request to understand a certain aspect more, I think both from a technical perspective and a workflow perspective, I would not have that expectation towards the players. Yeah, he can't tell you to feel a certain way, because at the end of the day, you get a product and you feel a way about a product. So it'd be silly to be like, you know, shut up. You know, that being said, we do get a lot of feedback from players. And they say things like, oh, I want such and such. I want this type of content. When it comes to those types of things we can do, I will be open and say this is possible and give a timeline of we would like to be able to do such and such by a time. When it comes to things which we are not able to do, I would say openly that it isn't possible, or I could say that technically it isn't possible yet, but I would provide various types of answers based on the situation. So when I'm asked these questions by players, I will be open and provide an honest answer. And when I'm asked the reason why it's not possible, it's been my policy right from the start to be open and honest about the reasons. If there's anything I would ask from the players, that I hope they would be open and receptive to listen to the answers that I provide, because if they provide me with a response along the lines of, well, that's got nothing to do with us, or that's not our problem, make me stop and think, okay, well, how should I answer questions moving forward? Fair. If anything, I hope that we would be able to have an open and mutual discussion, because at the end of the day, we are people, and I do hope that we will be able to reach a mutual understanding and continue to openly discuss the possibilities together. I also like to say something not as a developer of 14 or as a member of Square Enix, but just as a member of the games developer community in the industry. I attended opening night live for Gamescom. I would see all the gamers gathered from around the globe. As developers, it's our inspiration and aim to make the best playing experience for all players to enjoy, and I really hope that players will not forget this. We are putting our very best in order to deliver that experience for them. Of course, from a player's perspective, there are games which they might find fun, and there are games they might not find fun for them. But at the end of the day, as developers, we are doing our best to provide the best experience for the players, and I really do hope that the players won't forget that. Of course, right now around the world, there are a lot of big problems and very difficult situations. As a result of that, there's certain feedback that comes up on social media, but I do hope players won't forget at the end of the day that as developers, we are people too. Really hope that we can work on fostering the positive relationship with our players, because we are people. I really hope we can strive together to work on that relationship together and really make it something positive. I mean, it's great to want that, right? And you can tell there are people who really want to legitimately have critical discussions about Final Fantasy XIV, about the things that have gone neglected for some time that they wish hadn't been neglected, but also about the things that they actively still do enjoy about Final Fantasy XIV, the reasons they log in, whether it be people, big fishing, to raid, to clear the raid, to work on an ultimate, to solo the deep dungeons, do whatever, right? Whatever floats anyone's boat. People want to be able to have that discussion. And it's really hard sometimes, especially as of late, to actually have a critical discussion about 14 without people taking it off the rails in either direction, making it so that any form of criticism is considered to be negative and unwelcome, and people who put any form of positivity as absolute shill white knight behavior. It's really hard to have a good critical discussion when you just don't find any place in the middle to actively have the discussion at some point. So I think more than anything, he's saying that people should feel free to be critical about the things they want to be. And then people should feel free to be positive about the things they want to be. It's just a matter of being able to understand why someone may not like something and understand why someone does like something. And then accept that if that you don't agree with it, that's fine. And that's kind of the end of that discussion right there. Finally, how are you doing in general? You've worked on 14 for more than a decade now. You produced 16, and you say you've been contributing your opinion on 17. He didn't say on 17. He just said on the next installment. That doesn't mean it's a numbered title. I'll just say that. Are you okay? Are you not creatively exhausted? Do you have a way of keeping your energy up? Oh, but I want to hear your thoughts. Looking at me today, do I look exhausted or burned out? You're the picture of health. You look like a 20-year-old man. Well, then that's your answer. I'm good. I translate that in my head as, bro, you don't want me to get started. Just tell me what you think my answer is, and I'm going to go with that. All right? You don't even want me to get started. I can't even imagine trying to go through all that. A fairly insightful interview, a little bit more into the processes of things and less about any individual bit here. A little bit more of a humanized interview, if I may say so myself. And I like these from time to time. it's good to be able to draw any form of discussion about it. So I know my comment section will once again feel free to do that plenty, and I can't wait. Oh, I say can't wait. It's gonna be hilarious because I've grown very used to it in my comment sections as of late, so it should be a good time. So anyway, that's gonna be a wrap for me. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. And listen, I don't know if there's any more interviews coming, but like I've got some stuff in the pipeline. All right, I've got some stuff in the pipeline. All right. Anyway, with that, I will see all of you in the next video. Until then.